Welcome to a mini Smart Firefighting podcast series, recorded live at the Institute of Fire Engineers booth during the 2024 AFAC show, Down Under in Sydney, Australia. Throughout these conversations, we dive into critical issues like fire safety, emerging technologies, diversity in the fire service, and innovative solutions for emergency response. Enjoy these fascinating insights from leaders around the world on how we can build a safer and more resilient future. Craig Hiscock, Technical Director, Global Fire Safety at Aurecon, discusses the use of 3D BIM models and real photographs to create immersive firefighting training videos. He also addresses the unique fire safety challenges in tunnels and the importance of future-proofing infrastructure for long-term safety. We officially got our new little setup here where people can hear us on the outside.
Excellent.
Talking about God knows what. So now we actually have to talk about fire tech or fire safety, I guess.
Yeah. When we were having dinner last night, one of the things we came across in the conversation was about training videos and things for firefighters and how we turn design elements into training elements for firefighters and maintenance personnel and things going forward. When I was working in New Zealand a few years ago, I did a training video for the New Zealand Fire Service. Fantastic tool. They basically took my design knowledge and converted that into a video. That video was then used to train their personnel around that particular asset. It gave them all the features of the asset, where they'd approach from, where they'll find different bits of equipment, how they should use different bits of equipment. And it becomes a legacy tool where it can continue in their intranet system, and each time they have a firefighter leave, that knowledge is not lost because the training video is there in the background. With modern technology, we've now moved into a built environment world where everything's being done in 3D BIM, and we have the ability to develop models that can give people 3D aspects of assets as they're being constructed, and then they can use that information to then form training tools, maintenance procedures. They can investigate. One of the things I would like to see is a combination of that BIM environment and actual real photographs as well, so that the guys not only see it from a 3D point of view, they can tap on it, bring it up and show that it's a photograph and they're actually seeing in real time what they would see if they were standing there.
Well, Craig, there's only 100 things I want to ask you about that, but to take a step back, how did you get sort of involved in being a niche subject matter expert within fire safety and tunnels?
I prefer not to call myself an expert, but
as a practitioner.
Practitioner, yeah. Long story. I effectively started as a trade background. So my trade background was installing fire sprinklers and the like. I then had a health scare, which made me think that I needed to use my brain more than my brawn, and went and did an engineering degree and started with Arup. And my first job was working on a tunnel. That job didn't eventuate, so I moved on and worked for the Queensland Fire and Rescue Service in their major infrastructure division for about 18 months. And then I moved back into consultancy, mainly because I didn't like identifying things that weren't right and then not being able to be part of the solution. I like fixing problems rather than finding problems. So, yeah.
I thought you were going to say you like creating problems.
Well, sometimes. But so, yeah, it's developed off the back of that. So, almost 20 years in engineering, or more than 20 years in engineering, and a previous 20 years of construction-based work has given me a good realm for what can and can't be done in engineering.
And so I follow a couple different people on LinkedIn, and there's one gentleman named Wojciech, butchering his name a little bit. He's based out of Poland. Are you familiar with him?
I'm aware of him, yeah.
He talks a lot, and I've seen a lot of posts from him, and there's another guy named Jacob Balowski, but they talk a lot about the fire safety risk challenges within tunnels. From your perspective, what are some of the unique inherent challenges and risks that tunnels face, especially to first responders?
Well, the moment you have an enclosed environment, you increase temperatures, you increase smoke capture, you inherently have a different condition than you would if it was an open environment where smoke can dissipate to atmosphere. In a tunnel, it's like a longitudinal pipe, and there are airflows that are created within that tube that are caused by vehicle movements or train movements or other things occurring in there that don't normally happen in a built environment like we're sitting in today.
And then as far as this training video that you created and within New Zealand, like how is it, what was the kind of creation of the video process like? How is it being used now? And is this sort of maybe an education program that could be kind of maybe not the exact same, but utilized in some capacity within other places around the world with tunnels?
Definitely. So the nucleus of it was originally started as a project-based approach where the project wanted to, because it was one of the first tunnels that had been recently built in New Zealand, the project decided that they wanted to put a training video together to explain to fire service about how they would approach an incident, where their opportunities to enter the tunnel were from, where they would find the fire safety features, etc. New Zealand Fire Service liked that model so much that when they did the second tunnel, which was much bigger, that they wanted to create a training video for their own purposes that would allow them to then train their people indefinitely about that asset. So it was looking at how they would respond to the asset, where their entry points would be, what to look for, where they'd find fire panels, where they'd find hydrants, things to be aware of from a risk perspective. Those were all identified in that video.
And then what's it been like in terms of, you mentioned wanting to retain this knowledge. I know in the fire service, in any industry, some people retire, or people change jobs, whatever it may be. That idea of retaining knowledge and being able to kind of train the future, how has that been received? And ultimately, what's that like?
It's been well received and it's well used. I actually went over to New Zealand recently and I was talking to a couple of firefighters and they were like, we know you from somewhere. They can't picture where it was from. And then they said, you're the guy in the video. So it is well received. It is being used on a regular basis and it's been implemented as part of their ongoing training.
You're that guy with the face.
That's the guy. That's the guy.
You were the guy.
Yeah.
One thing that we were talking about at dinner last night was this idea of future-proofing. When you hear the word future-proofing, what does that mean to you?
So for me, future-proofing can be a number of different things. It can be looking at whether a piece of infrastructure has to deal with higher populations or different changes in vehicle types, fuel types, that type of thing. It can also be about how we look at how the asset's going to be operated in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years' time. That can be part of our future-proofing process. Are the systems that we choose to go into those assets now the right systems for 20, 30, 50 years' time?
When I was on the plane over from LAX to Sydney, I had 16 hours of flight. Maybe it was 15 and a half, whatever. But there was one documentary I was watching, and in it talked about this idea of cathedral thinking, of where sometimes the architects who are building this project won't even be alive when the project is finished. And the idea is that you're not building for a quick build. It's something that's going to be around for more than 7 generations. When you think about construction and then ultimately how we're approaching this, that's obviously kind of a fully loaded question, but what are your thoughts on that?
So every time we build a tunnel or transport-related infrastructure project in Australia, we're building it with a 100-year design life. I'm not going to be around in 100 years, but it's a legacy that we're leaving for the next generation and generations after that. And so making sure that we have enough inherent thought process into the safety features we build into that is what's going to benefit those generations as it comes forward.
It's awesome. And then as we're sitting here under this little IFE little sign of sorts that actually I put up with Ryan, which was quite the fun adventure. The Institute of Fire Engineers, what's been your alignment with them? Who is, in your words, like what is the IFE and what do they do?
So the Institute of Fire Engineers is a blending of firefighters and a blending of engineers coming together to work for common benefits. And for my personal experience, I started with the fire service as one of their major infrastructure engineers. That's where I was introduced to the IFE, and I've been involved in what they've been doing in some way, shape, or form ever since.
For the layman, whether it's or woman of whether you're a firefighter or you're a fire engineer, why is it something that, in your opinion, that's something that's valuable to be a part of?
You talked about it when we first started the conversation. You said that there are people retiring out of the industry, and I think when I look around the room, there's a lot of people, and I'm getting quite on in my years, but there's a lot of people who are getting older and moving out. And the legacy that this institute does is it allows us to encapsulate our knowledge and pass that down to the younger generation coming through.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well said, Craig. And I want to give you one last sort of mic drop of sorts. Is there any quote or any sort of line of inspiration or anything that you live by, or any sort of thing that you could leave with us kind of talking about, whether it's fire service related or general life related?
Life-related is always say yes, if it suits you. From a legacy of what we want to do from an industry, I think step back and understand the other person's position. As a younger engineer, I was very firebrand and wanting to impose my position on people. As I've gotten older, I've found it's better to sit back and listen to what the other person's thoughts are and adapt or try and understand their position and why that's trying to influence the decisions that are being made.
Yeah. Well said, Craig. Well, you officially have earned your Tim Tam if you want. We have mint ones. I also heard it's either double coat or bust. So if you want double coat,
I'm going to go with double choc.
You know what? That's what it's there for. So I think maybe instead of, I don't know if you've seen, there's some podcast shows where they, or it's like a TV show where they literally eat hot wings and they see who can go the farthest. I think I might start a show on eating Tim Tams while we're podcasting.
While we're podcasting.
Yeah, doing it loud. So Craig, it was a pleasure. Nice talking with you, and thanks for your time.
No worries. Thank you.
Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode recorded alongside the Institute of Fire Engineers during the AFAC show. If you found value in the conversation or learned something new, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out, share your thoughts, and let's keep the discussion going on how we can shape the future of smart firefighting.